North Carolina voters endorsed common sense spending and low fair taxes on Election Day. Now, how do we know this? Well, it's because they re-elected fiscally conservative Republican majorities to the North Carolina Senate and the North Carolina House. And they did so at the very same time they also re-elected Democrat Roy Cooper for a second term as governor. So what does this all mean to you? Becki Gray is Senior Vice President with the John Locke Foundation. She follows all of these races very closely. She joins us now to take a look at all of that. Becki, welcome back.
Thank you, Donna.
An incredibly positive winning cycle for Republicans in the General Assembly.
Right.
And running up to Election Day, there was hesitation. People weren't really sure.
Well, running up to Election Day, we were hearing that the Senate could very well be an even split between Republicans and Democrats, 25 on each side. That's why there was a lot of attention in the last days on the lieutenant governor's race, who, of course, in their role, presides over the Senate and could cast a deciding vote. As a matter of fact, for the Democrat candidate, there was $8.5 million that was put into that campaign just in the last days of the election. So we were hearing that. We also were hearing that, the House could anticipate to lose several seats. Some were saying the Democrats would take over. Kind of the more likely thing that people were talking about was maybe going down from a 65 Republican majority to a 61 Republican majority. Actually, it was better than people. The outcomes were better than anybody, I think, had anticipated, except perhaps for Tim Moore and Phil Berger, who had been working like crazy through the election cycle, and the winning candidates, particularly those in the swing districts. Donna, the efforts that they had was just phenomenal against some pretty big spending in those races, too.
In fact, we have seen Democrat donors just pour money into North Carolina. There was just a national effort focused on North Carolina to try to flip our legislature over to the Democrats. It did not work. Our friend Brad Crone, a political consultant and analyst, saying, wow, those folks have to be waking up and wondering what was the return on their investment.
Yeah. Well, just a quick note on that, too. In the governor's race, of course, we're still getting the figures in, and, we'll see at the end of the day. But what we're hearing now is about $30 million was spent on Governor Cooper's race. For Dan Forest, his opponent, it was like $4.5 million. So, I'm not that good at math. I can't do like how much that was outspent, but it was a lot.
Yeah, Forest was dwarfed financially.
Right, exactly. And so you see that kind of effort. And, really my question in the gubernatorial race was, with that kind of financial advantage, with Roy Cooper being on television and radio, in many cases the front page of the newspaper, for 7 months leading up to the election, he only beat Dan Forest by about 4.5 points. My question is, with all of that advantage, why didn't he do better than that?
Yeah, it ends up being only a 4-point victory for Governor Cooper, which is, a clear victory. But to your point, there had been polls saying it was going to be an 8 to 10-point race there. And that just shows the strength, really, of the Republicans who came out to vote. And so many of those Republicans voted in those House and Senate races. Let's talk a little bit about the House, because they now have, 68, 69 seats, again, waiting for the final numbers to roll through.
And that would be a pickup of 6.
Incredible.
So, in this cycle with the predictions of gloom and doom, of course, I think we're all kind of questioning polling and predictions and all at this point, across the board. But, so, to pick up 6 seats in this environment was pretty amazing.
And over in the North Carolina Senate, within a seat or two, it's going to be about the same majority.
It looks
Republicans
like, and again, as we're talking today, we still don't have the final tabulations, but it looks like that the Senate will have lost 2 that they anticipated, one in Mecklenburg, one in Wake, and the demographics in the districts have changed enough. They knew that going in, but they picked up one. Michael Lee, former Senator Michael Lee, looks like he defeated Harper Peterson in that Senate district down in the New Hanover County area.
So that's the politics of it. Becki, let's talk a little bit about the policy that is behind the vote from North Carolinians, because over the past at least half dozen years, maybe close to a whole decade, we have seen the Republicans in the General Assembly be fiscally conservative. They have cut taxes. They've reformed our tax system so everybody has lower income tax. They've reined in spending, and this just seems to be a resounding endorsement to continue that.
Well, let me just offer a couple other things, too, that have been on voters' minds. We also have health care. And, what we've heard from the left is the answer to the high cost of health care and the difficulty of people being able to afford health insurance is to expand Medicaid. Education has also been always a big issue in North Carolina. 57% of our budget goes for education. In North Carolina, we care about education and have consistently. But, what we've heard from Roy Cooper is, and the left, because that message has resonated on down through the legislative races, the answer of improving education is raising teacher pay. What you've heard from the Republicans, and we've done at the Locke Foundation a tremendous amount of work on school choice and offering options for parents and students to best meet their needs to get a sound basic education. So, there's a clear difference up and down the line on issues that are important to North Carolinians. And Donna, go back and review some of the television ads, review some of the mailers, review just what Roy Cooper has been talking about since he went into office, and that's Medicaid expansion and teacher pay increase. What we saw in the swing districts. Now, let me be clear, North Carolina is gerrymandered. As most states are. That means that there are some districts. Now, part of this is they're gerrymandered because it's where people choose to live. There's nothing nefarious about this. But, there are districts that are solidly Republican. There are districts that are solidly Democrat. Where I'm looking for, what kind of message are we getting? It's in those swing districts that we were looking at. And in both the House and the Senate, in those swing districts, Republicans prevailed. And I have to believe that it is because the policies and the message and the answers and the solutions to the problems that North Carolinians care about, and that's taxes and budget, the size of government, regulation, education, the right investments in infrastructure, that the solutions that Republicans have to offer resonate more with voters than the Democrats' answer of Medicaid expansion, more spending, higher taxes, more regulation, and just focusing on the financial part of education rather than looking at what really is going to be best for students.
So, Becki, based on that, then going forward, because, the legislature, you work with the governor, and there's always negotiations among legislators themselves as they work towards public policy decisions. If some of those leftists, the progressives in the Democratic Party, realize that the people they're representing have rejected those leftist ideas, is that going to change the policy guidelines and mileposts here in North Carolina?
Donna, I'm very optimistic about that. And of course, the John Locke Foundation is well positioned to have those ideas and present those to the new members of the General Assembly and the governor, as we have been doing. What has struck me is one of the governor's statements just since the election. He said that moving forward, he wants to focus on affordable health care. He wants to focus on a better education, and he wants to focus on the economy and getting people back to work. We being the John Locke Foundation, we have ideas to solve all of those problems. I am very optimistic that given this, that we will have a receptive audience in the governor's office, and that all members of the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle are going to be looking for those ideas that are not partisan, but actually address the problems that face North Carolinians. And so, you're hearing all this stuff about we need to have kumbaya, we need to come together. I just think when you have the best policy ideas on the table, you're going to have people anxious to sit at that table.